We talking about Texas. We talking about Texas. Okay? Not Louisiana, not South Carolina, not South Carolina that my family has lived and died for, play every game like it's they last. Not South Carolina. We talking about Texas. Texas? Texas. We talking about Texas. Shout out to all the subscribers and the members here on the channel. Don't forget to like the video. My name is Reese Waters, and I'm trouble. Well, y'all saw it.
Well, Tiffany, we told everyone this morning on Daybreak about this change this year, this election day in Dallas County, requiring voters to go to a specific voting location. Well, we are already seeing the confusion this morning, including here at Fretz Park. We were talking to some voters as they were leaving here in the parking lot. Many told us they showed up here because it's where they always vote, only to be told they had to go to another location. I spoke with the election judge here. He told me there's been plenty of confusion because of this new change and that it was not in effect for early voting. It's in effect only today on Election Day. Now, complicating things further, two voters can live in the same precinct yet have different voting locations depending if they're voting in the Democrat or Republican primary. At Fretz Park, it's the location for only two precincts in the Democratic primary, but 5 in the Republican primary. So easy to understand why voters are confused and frustrated.
Well, this is the place I voted for the last 3 elections, and I get here and they tell me I have to go someplace else. And this happens every election. They have some craziness when you get here. I think this is on purpose and it's designed to make us not vote.
Message!
And this should stop.
And that's something the election officials worry about. They worry that people are coming here, getting frustrated and saying, you know what, I'm just not going to vote. And that's what they do not want. So they want you to go to the correct location for these Dallas County voters. You can go to dallascountyvotes.org. Double and triple check your voting location before you head to the polls.
Have y'all ever known anybody to hide, to amplify suspicion, to move in secrecy, to cover up them not cheating?
Hell no!
We all was kids once upon a time. You ever hide a report card and you made the honor roll? Hell no, to the no, yeah, to the no. Anybody ever sneak out the house? You ever take a call late at night and sneak out the house to go meet your friends and play shuffleboard? I mean, you know what I mean? At a hotel, you ever go to a hotel late at night to go meet your friends and play shuffleboard and stop answering your phone?
This woman came in and said she needed to use the restroom.
Well, what the hell she doing naked?
I mean, let's be honest. We know exactly how raggedy y'all's side of the aisle looks. Your primary is being led by Ken Paxton.
It's voting time, so let's cut through the bullshit. Crooked Ken Paxton cheated on his wife. She's divorcing him on biblical grounds. So now Paxton's wrecking another home, sleeping around with a married mother of 7.
You know it's bad when his opponent's primary mode of attack is talk to his family. They'll tell you. Talk to his family. Talk to anybody around him. They'll tell you all about him. I ain't got to say nothing. Y'all know all about it. That's how raggedy it is on y'all side of the aisle, making arguments like, well, John Cornyn is the one we could most likely get across the finish line. In Texas, as a Republican, oh boy, that Trump backlash is savage. Speaking of savage, y'all really gonna keep Wesley Hunt on the screen? I see what the numbers look like. Yeah, y'all gonna keep him on the screen? You know he got 45 votes. Y'all know that man got 40. He got a family. He got a family. You gonna keep Wesley Hunt on the screen? At least take his picture off. Just put a W on there, like y'all couldn't find a picture, like he's somebody y'all don't know. Do something like help Wesley out. Help and let me ask this question, because y'all kept talking on the Democratic side of the aisle about black turnout. That was all the conversation on the Democratic side was black turnout. Why y'all ain't talking about black turnout with the Republicans with Wesley?
Wesley Hunt, for a year, spent a year living in Robert E. Lee Barracks. Every single day that I walked beneath that threshold, I looked up and saw that name and thought to myself, damn, this is a great country.
You don't forget about where you from. Don't
I never-
paint the picture. Don't tell us that we can't educate our kids on the opportunity. You're talking about vouchers. You're talking about things that's still going to cost them more money.
Oh, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And now that I think about it, half of those 45 votes that he got was just people thought they was asking, do you like to hunt? They just, do you like to hunt? Yes. You know, they thought it was a questionnaire. That's how he got half his votes right there. You know, I don't know how any of the other ones voted for him. And same goes for Gonzalez, who managed to go to a runoff despite the most savage scandal this side of Epstein. A runoff. Who was he running against? Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, okay. Now I got it. That makes sense. I'm rooting for him, though. I'm rooting for him just because I want Gonzalez to have to come home. Like, who you lose to? 1983. Yeah, 1983 got me. Got 55% of the vote. What you gonna do? And by the way, that 55% of the vote wouldn't even be 55 votes. Some of them districts was putting up basketball scores. Basketball scores. Got a whole district. I swear, our system is a hot mess. Which brings us back to the voter suppression.
Wrong place and where I live is far away, and I just wanted to vote here and get back to work, and she told me she wouldn't let me. I was hoping she'll just let me go in. She said I'm at the wrong place. I can't vote here.
I've always voted here, say, 8 years in a row now. I've come to this location, but now they're telling me that I need to go to another location to vote.
Did they explain why?
No, they didn't explain why. And then when I went online yesterday, because I knew they were going to try to do this, I went yesterday online to register and everything like that to find out where my poll is, and it got me nowhere.
Have you ever known a team to challenge the results of a game that they won? Have you ever known that? Has the winning team ever challenged the results? You ever see a pitcher get strike 3 and then start arguing with the umpire? He ever called ball 4 and before the batter can walk to first base, he gets himself ejected going at it with the umpire? How have we allowed, as a country, how have we allowed this party to simultaneously argue the will of the American people to the point of saying they have a mandate? Now, I ain't heard that word in a long time. They must have lost custody of the M Encyclopedia Britannica. They lost that one. I ain't heard mandate in 6 months. I don't know what happened to mandate. But y'all remember they used to argue they had a mandate and they had the will of the American people while simultaneously engaging in massive voter suppression and voter intimidation. You know what I mean? Why? And by the way, I have a video coming out all about the news media and how much the news media has failed us. And we are seeing it disgustingly when it comes to Iran. But a great number of things we've seen the news media completely fail us and let us down. But the fact that the news media doesn't make that point number one when they discuss these elections is wild. It's wild. That's crazy. That's crazy. That's crazy that they're not made to answer for these things. While he's sitting up there talking about the only way they can win is to cheat and this, that, he's been running around saying that for 6 years. All while this is happening. And don't nobody say nothing. Not a word.
I be quiet, but when he leave, I be talking again.
Now, all of this happened, all that you are seeing today happened after we saw a record number of early votes. Okay, we saw a record number of early votes in the Texas primary, and to the point where people were building narratives about flipping the state.
You don't find that suspicious? You don't find that suspicious?
It's against that backdrop that Texas adopts new rules for election day, for primary election day. Now, I would have to ask, again, to my point about common sense, street politics, I would have to ask, what would be the reason to adopt new rules on election day? Can you think of a good reason to adopt new rules on election day? You know what we're going to do? We're going to put in a whole new offense. We're going to revamp this whole offense, and we're going to put in a whole new offense. No, we're not going to practice. No, I'm going to put it in. I'm going to put it in when we do the huddle before the next game. I'm going to put it in. Okay? When we right when we get together, like that little 30 seconds after you hear after they do the and before we hit the floor, that's what I'm gonna put in the offense. And then y'all do what y'all do. That makes sense, right? That makes sense to put in new rules on game day.
If you don't want to play that way, don't play that way. Break.
You can't press me when this is what you have to do to win a Senate election in Texas. In Texas. And ain't California. This ain't New York. This ain't Maryland. This ain't even Virginia or New Jersey. This ain't even Florida. We talking about Texas. We talking about Texas. Okay? Not Louisiana. Not South Carolina. Not South Carolina that my family has lived and died for. Play every game like it's their last. Not South Carolina. We talking about Texas. 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 We talking about Texas.
I'm supposed to be the franchise player, and we're in here talking about practice.
Well, Coach,
I mean, listen, we talking about practice. Not a game. We talking about practice.
The Dallas County Republicans and Williamson County GOP chose to implement precinct-specific voting locations for Election Day. Under state law, this forced the local Democratic parties to follow suit against our will. Both Dallas and Williamson County voters have grown accustomed to countrywide voting, including on Election Day. This effort to suppress the vote, to confuse and inconvenience voters, is having its intended effect as people are being turned away from the polls. We are monitoring the situation and working with our local county party to explore all solutions, including an extension of Election Day voting hours. I'm asking all voters in Dallas and Williamson counties to check their county's election website or their voter registration card to identify the correct polling location for today. Do not give up and do not give in. The only way we can put an end to these maneuvers is by outvoting the Republicans and kicking them out of office. I'm calling on you to go out and cast your ballots so they know Texans don't appreciate having their votes suppressed, and we won't take it lying down. That was from Jasmine Crockett.
A few moments later.
Walk us through what's at play, what's happening, because this is to the point that we're making here. Again, this is all within just the last couple of minutes. This is developing into a situation there around Dallas County.
Yeah, it definitely is. So obviously we know that judge had ruled that polls could stay open until 9 p.m. local time, 10 p.m. Eastern time. And then Attorney General Ken Paxton sought to block that in the Texas Supreme Court. And the Texas Supreme Court did ultimately issue a stay saying that those votes that were cast after 7 p.m. local time needed to be separated out. So blocking that those polls would stay open. Now I'm talking to the campaign and they say that they are fighting back on this. But I will tell you, in the last hour as those early votes were coming in, they said that they were feeling good, but that Dallas County was going to be the thing that would put them over the edge. They are banking on Dallas County. And so I asked them, what does this mean in terms of the chaos that it could cause around trying to count this vote and look at these results? And they said that, quote, it's definitely a concern. So they are very worried about this right now and what they're seeing in Dallas County and what exactly this means for them. Because, of course, they had been looking at the turnout here and just saying that it was off the charts, amazing. This is her home turf, and this was going to be the county to help her bring over that victory tonight. That is what she told me. And now you have this confusion, and we don't even know what those results are going to look like coming out and how prolonged this court battle could ultimately end up being, because they said that they are definitely fighting this.
Priscilla, what's the mood there given this development? I know it's loud there, but are people reacting?
You know, I will tell you that the screens are not up in here where people are able to see what is happening with the vote. And so the mood in here is great. The energy is great. People have been coming over to my laptop to try to look at the results and to try to understand what is actually happening. So I don't think it's very clear to people in here what exactly is going on. But what I'm hearing from folks is confidence that once those big city numbers start coming in, as someone just told me, Texas is rural. So it may look like Talarico right now has the lead, but they are waiting to see more of those big city vote counts. And of course, Dallas County, which now is sort of in limbo.
Now, we'll be curious to hear what the stance is from the Talarico camp, because he did indicate in the before times that he was for the extension of the precinct hours. Now that he has a lead, I'm wondering just how thorough that commitment to enfranchising voters is, which, you know, that's a bigger conversation about how thorough your convictions are depending on your political circumstances, which is part of the issues I've had with this whole entire race. Not with Talarico, but with y'all.
I just want to make sure everybody understands the drama that we're seeing play out in Dallas right now. It's something I've never seen before. You have an unknown number of voters who were turned away and maybe came to vote after what was originally the deadline in those extra 2 hours. You also have the Attorney General, who, by the way, is also on the ballot, who is in Dallas County tonight asking the Supreme Court to put all of those untold number of votes aside. This has the potential to turn very messy, and if I were the Crockett campaign, I would be demanding a quick resolution so we figure out where those votes went.
Unfortunately, this is what Republicans like to do. And so they specifically targeted Dallas County, and I think we all know why. So I want you to enjoy yourselves, but I won't be back tonight because I have no idea of when we're going to get results, and I fully anticipate it won't be until tomorrow. So I love y'all too. Thank you so very much for being here.
To me, it was all about the math, right?
Yeah.
And listen, every vote should be counted. I think they should go through the legal process and figure it out. But I think we can practically say that there probably are not 75,000 people that voted in Dallas County in the last 2 hours that are open. That is an open question right now. And so I think the question for Jasmine Crockett now is the Democrats are heading toward a situation right now where every single Republican I've talked to tonight says that the Paxton Cornyn race is going to a runoff. Every single Republican believes that. And so the Democrats are in a position where they could anoint their nominee tonight and hit the ground running. Is Jasmine Crockett going to put the Democrats in a situation where, and she kind of alluded to this, to her credit, that, you know, maybe there isn't the votes there, but the Democrats would love to have a unity rally tomorrow and kick off their campaign. If this is an open question and they're waiting for the legal challenges to kind of play out, that could delay that process.
Come on now, dog. Come on, man.
So the question he asked, and what's been put to Jasmine Crockett, is whether or not she's going to put the Democrats in a position where they won't be able to anoint their Senate candidate and hit the ground running tomorrow. As we see an attorney general who's on the ballot challenge an extension of voting hours due to them initiating new procedure the day of voting, specifically impacting her home county. Because she apparently does not deserve for those votes to be counted, for that process to play out. She does not deserve the time to make sure that she, in fact, did not win the election, regardless of how the election was conducted. Which is fascinating because that's the same logic that I saw from a lot of leftists and pundits when Colin Allred clapped back at James Talarico when he was called a mediocre black man. Why would you respond? Why would you take shots? Why would you go there? Apparently, he doesn't have the right to respond when somebody puts that out into the ether during an election cycle when he's on the ballot, which is funny because that's also the same logic, big picture, that we see with regards to Jasmine Crockett, and it comes to the work that she has done to oppose this regime and give voice to all manner of disenfranchised communities, not all of whom were black and not all of whom were in Texas. But when she decides that she wants to run for the Senate, you know, given the fact that she was gerrymandered out of her seat because they decided to do mid-decade gerrymandering, mid-decade redistricting. Why would you go and muddy the waters for the Democrats when we have such a winnable seat? She doesn't have the right to that ambition, even though they took her seat away. And she's been one of the greatest voices that all manner of people from that side of the aisle have been championing when they were precious few that stood opposed to this administration. It's fascinating. It's fascinating that we would land at a place where Jasmine Crockett now has the responsibility to allow the Democrats to anoint their winner. So many different takeaways here. So many different takeaways here. Not the least of which I saw quite often tonight. Quite a number of people say we're seeing a testing of the waters, and we are seeing things be thrown against the wall to see if they stick for later on this year when they conduct the midterms. I think that in my coverage of this particular race, I have had not nearly as much smoke for James Talarico as I have had for all the things surrounding this particular race. Nasty work. And the reason why I haven't had nearly as much smoke for James Talarico is because I've had nothing but positive things to say about James Talarico before this race began, before this primary race began. I thought that he was somebody who I thought could have a pretty bright future in left-wing politics. And as somebody that tries to conduct themselves with a level of integrity, I'm not all of a sudden going to switch up because he's running against Jasmine Crockett. But unfortunately, the same can't be said for so many on this side of the aisle who rode on the back and the coattails of Jasmine Crockett and her magical voice and her ability to cut through and communicate a message. But all of a sudden, when she stands in the way of your chosen one, she doesn't have the right. So here's my question. What happens now? What happens now? Because the reality is that I can stomach James Talarico as a Democratic nominee far better than I could stomach how Jasmine Crockett was treated. How Jasmine Crockett was treated is going to stay with me far longer. And what you have to contend with and what you decided to ignore is the fact that Black men and Black women have been the most consistent and steady voting bloc for Democrats for years. And apparently, it was worth whatever chances you think James Talarico has to win the Senate seat in Texas. Whatever you think it is, 25%, 30%, 40%, doesn't matter. Whatever percentage chance you think James Talarico has to win the Senate seat in Texas was worth showing that voting bloc your entire. Apparently, that was worth it for you. Apparently, Democrats, well, not just Democrats, but, political parties, they do all the polling. They got all the numbers. Apparently, it was worth inflaming the most reliable voting bloc you have for a whatever percent chance of winning the Senate seat in Texas. See, that math doesn't math to me, but you're free to make your own decision. You could have ran this race. And let me also say this. I by no means think that Jasmine Crockett cannot be opposed. I don't think she's somehow owed the nomination or that she can't be in a primary against someone. You could oppose Jasmine Crockett all you want. It's how. when James Talarico makes missteps, magically it's Jasmine Crockett's fault. If she calls out what she rightfully sees as a double standard, magically it's Jasmine Crockett's fault. There was nothing in this race that didn't go through the machinations of left-wing punditry that didn't land on her feet. And so many of us know exactly what that feels like. So many of us know that feeling well. It's just very different when it's happening over here. It's a whole different shade. See, we're used to that. That's the kind of stuff that Jasmine Crockett talks about all the time. And I'll be darned if that isn't exactly what we saw in the build up to this election. So how does this go? Like what's the next move? Because you're going to have to turn around and communicate to the overwhelming numbers. Now, this is assuming that Talarico ends up being the nominee. But if Talarico ends up being the nominee, you will have to turn around and communicate to the overwhelming numbers of Black voters who turned out for Jasmine Crockett. What? Exactly will that message be? Because without that, whatever percentage chance that you thought you had for James Talarico to win this race go down significantly.
But wait, there's more.
One of the justifications I saw for Talarico's support in this race in general was that he had a better chance in the general. He had a better chance in the general. And that he had the ability to get Republicans that Jasmine Crockett couldn't. And you know what? I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that. You know why? Because I sat right here in this room in November of 2024. That's why I don't disagree with that. Because if we want to talk about somebody in that race that clearly offered all the things that her opponent lacked, and if there wasn't a disqualifying, if there was a disqualifying factor, he had it. And still America found a way to put Donald Trump back into the White House. And because I've sat through that, if you want to tell me that a year and change later, we haven't changed that much, how could I possibly disagree with that? But you have to call a thing a thing. Call a thing a thing. And the treatment of Jasmine Crockett during the course of this primary does nothing but help that narrative of who is more electable in the general. Because you just showed us exactly how problematic outspoken Black women can be when they reach this proximity to power. You got to call a thing a thing.
I said, hold up, wait a minute, something ain't right.
Let me get this straight. So the left wing decided to kneecap Jasmine Crockett because they thought James Talarico was the better candidate in the general. Yet the nefariousness on the Republican side affected Jasmine Crockett's base. And now we see Ken Paxton pushing to get the Supreme Court to throw out votes from Dallas County during those extended hours. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, because the thought process with the Stephen Colbert situation, right, was that the administration was somehow trying to help Crockett. That was a thought process that came from the left. They were trying to help Crockett because they know that James Talarico was the better. They don't want James Talarico. The administration is doing all this because they don't want James Talarico. That was the leftist thought process, right? They didn't want James Talarico, so the administration is getting in the way because they want to help Jasmine Crockett. So how can you reconcile that with what's being done right now? That's not working for me. That's not working for me. That's not working for me. Because it feels to me like if they see that James Talarico is ahead, they would do anything possible to try and get Jasmine Crockett over the top. If that's the one that they really, that's the one that they really want. That's the one that they really want, because Donald Trump makes a habit out of disparaging people that he knows he doesn't have to worry about and is not concerned about whatsoever. He finds the most inconsequential people, and that's who he just stay talking about. The most inconsequential people whatsoever. So if I got you straight, they are challenging Jasmine Crockett's lifeline in order to win this Senate seat nomination. Seems to me like they want James. Now, if your thought is that he was the most electable, y'all must have a difference of opinion. It seemed like that's not what Ken Paxton thinks. That ain't what Ken Paxton thinks. Now, Ken Paxton thinks some crazy stuff. That's why he got a divorce on biblical grounds. He don't make the most sound decisions, okay? He don't make the most sound decisions. But I don't necessarily think that Ken Paxton is out here moving on his own. Ken Paxton definitely not out here moving on his own, okay? We know that Donald Trump got his hand in his trousers, along with probably some other hands in his trousers too, apparently, what his wife said. It'd be hands in his trousers. But we know that Ken Paxton is moving as the Republican establishment is moving. And to let them tell it, they apparently want James. So, we gonna see. We gonna see. I hope y'all were right.
It's in the rearview mirror. We are living Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s dream.
Another one they like to say, they talk about how Jasmine is the big money candidate. Yeah, Jasmine is the establishment big money candidate. And James Talarico, I tell you, James Talarico, he just take donation in ones. If you give him a 5, he say, I can't take that. That's special interest. That's a 5. I only take donation in ones. Word?
We're taking a look at some of those ad spending numbers that you talked about on both sides of the primary aisle here on Democrats and Republicans.
Oh, no, wait. I thought Jasmine Crockett was the big money candidate. Oh, that's crazy. They told me now, because I was on leftist YouTube. They told me Jasmine Crockett was the big money candidate taking in all the money from outside. Wow. Wow. It's really the more you know, isn't it? It really is the more you know. Narratives be crazy, though. Let me tell you that. Narratives be crazy. And as much as I'm disappointed very, very disappointed to see so many different people, so many different groups conduct themselves the way they have during the course of this primary season. Information is information, right? It's disappointing when you find out something is not the case when you thought that it was. But that thing was what it was, whether you knew it or not. It's just that now you know. And knowing is half the battle. No, it's just that now you know. And knowing is never a bad thing. I don't want to know. Now we can move forward with our eyes wide open. I would love to see a breakdown of the Latino vote with Jasmine Crockett. I would love to see that. I'm very curious about that because as somebody that has covered Jasmine Crockett quite a bit on this channel, I can't tell you the number of times that she has sat up in Congress and railed against ICE, railed against DHS, and railed against racial profiling of Latinos, railed against deportations and questioning due process. I can't tell you the number of times that I have used content of Jasmine Crockett specifically advocating for Latino Americans in Congress with power. But a narrative is a narrative, right? Ain't that right? Ain't that right, leftists? A narrative is a narrative, especially when you want to get your boy in. Especially when you want to get your boy in. And the wildest part of this particular race to me is you could have run it normally. Like, did you not think that James Talarico was a strong enough candidate that you had to engage in all of this? You could have run it normally. You know? I guess y'all know something I don't when it comes to James Talarico and his prospects. I guess we'll see what that is.